Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Developer Experience Office Hours here on OpenShift TV. I am Chris Short, executive producer of OpenShift TV. I am joined by two of my favorite Red Hatters, Serena from the future and Ryan Jarvinen. Serena Nichols is her real name. Today, Serena, we're talking about what exactly?
Today, we're going to give you an overview of our 2020 developer survey that we took around the OpenShift experience. So
wonderful.
Looking forward to share that with you guys.
Yeah, this should be fun and enlightening at the very least.
So do we want to kick it off right away?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody has any like office hours type questions for us, feel free to ask. But yeah, until someone asks something, let's go ahead and fire away here.
I'm going to head on over to the chat on Twitch. We also have chat running through YouTube Live via Restream, so feel free to join us on either of those outlets. You can find all the links on OpenShift.tv, and yeah, I'll be keeping an eye on chat, so definitely let us know if you have new topics that you would like to see on this show. This is intended to be an office hour segment. So definitely get active, ask your questions. We'll do our best to respond to any that you have. Yeah, we love talking about Kubernetes and development and how you can make the most of your development time while taking advantage of Kubernetes. So hopefully this developer survey has really kind of collected a lot of our feedback from you in the past in 2020, and we're anxious to hear what you've got on your mind going forward in 2021.
Awesome. Carlos Santana, one of our regulars and fellow IBMer, not fellow, we're Red Hatters, he's an IBMer, but you know, one team, one fight kind of deal, has a Tecton trigger deployment question for you, Ryan. I wonder if you can grab that.
I will take a look. Yeah.
The question is, how can I hide a Tecton trigger deployment from the UI topology? It's very annoying to have the automatic deployment there as noise.
From the topology
talking about like
UI.
GitOps add-on type stuff.
Yeah. I know we have some support for hiding things from the menus. I don't know if we have a filter that will easily allow you to hide things from the topology view at this point yet. That sounds like a good feature request, though, to be able to filter things from the topology as well as from the other lists. I think most of our filtering so far has been around kind of categories of things like it's probably not the exact example, but like hiding, I don't know, like if you didn't want to show certain operators or certain other things in the left-hand column, you can, I think, get some of those filtered out. Take a look at the console customization episodes of our developer experience office hours for more information about what console customizations are available today. And what you're capable of hiding and showing currently.
Yeah, let me see if I can find that one.
I'm loving this. Have no fear, YouTube is here. Reminds me of an old cartoon from back in the day.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, you want to dive in?
I'm happy to. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're going to share some of the survey analysis of the 2020 survey. This is just showing that we did have Shu Kwan was our data scientist associated with this, and Steve Spiker, who's usually kind of co-presenting on something like this, isn't available today. So I'm just going to be talking about it today. You know, the background is around to learn more about how developers are interacting with OpenShift and help drive product direction, of course. This is the third year that we've run the survey. And the survey ran from October 4th to November 22nd, so about 6 weeks at the end of the year. And we had 38 questions. So I'm going to try to give a quick overview of where we landed, and I can also, let me know if I need to pause for questions along the way. Most of the questions are on a rating of a scale of 1 to 4, where 1 is lowest and considered very unsatisfied, and high is the number 4 and very satisfied. You'll also see 3 different bars for most of the answers, where green is representing 2018, orange is 2019, and that hot pink color is representing 2020. And then you can also see on the bottom on the x-axis there is a scale, and that's kind of how we're indicating percentage across the board.
Nice.
The other thing is that we do, around a metric of understanding the deviation or the possibility of what is it called? Like the answers might not be specifically correct. There's a chance that there's like an 8%, right, dip, positive, minus on each of these things based on the sample size that we have and some of the metrics that we had. So just remember that as well. And so if we start looking into some of the questions we asked, the first one was around what type of application are you running on OpenShift? So this is pretty interesting, where the microservices, stateless apps, stateful apps, and traditional apps are definitely the most popular. But if you kind of look at where the numbers are trending from 2018, 19, and 20, you can see a decrease in there. About 3/4 of the way down, or 2/3 of the way down the page, you can see that we did add event-driven applications. And so that was a new item that came in, but it did come in at 6. So it's an interesting thing where we'll likely start to see that trend, where that's going to take an upswing across the board. And then there were some other options on the bottom that continued to gain a little bit from previous years, but nothing significant. What we also did was we kind of pulled in some of the slides around the CNCF survey to try to back up some of the data that we heard or got from our own survey. So this is around, do you run stateful apps in containers? And according to the CNCF survey, 55% are yes, running in production. So again, pretty interesting. It also talks about 12% are evaluating and 11% plan to use them in the next 12 months. So again, some similarities of the trend that we saw through our survey. This one is again from the CNCF. How is your organization using serverless technology? And so just under 1/3 of the respondents are using serverless technologies in production, and another 21% are evaluating, and 14 plan to use it in the next 12 months. So again, interesting information. As you all know, in the console, which is where I'm spending a lot of my time, we have a pretty large investment around the serverless experience on eventing and serving. And so I think this maps well into what we're seeing and reading here, right? So a question around how do you describe your serverless FAS application? So data processing is the most popular type of those types of apps. And then, the second, third, and fourth are all around the same percentage. So around 50% of the people who answered this question said that they are describing theirs as integration web apps and backend or REST APIs. So around the question of what did most people, what version was the most recent that they had experience with, you can see a good decline, a decent decline in the 3.11 or earlier, which is great, right? So if you kind of focus on that 3.11 or earlier, 80% of the respondents in 2019 said 3.11. Now we've got about 37% in 2020. So we're seeing that decline, which is what we're expecting. The thing that is interesting about this survey is that we are getting respondents of people that are using 3.x as well as 4. So we're not quite, so some of the answers that we're getting are also mixed based on 3 versus 4. So it's a little bit hard to kind of evaluate if some of those answers are more focused on one version or the other. So we're hoping in 2021, when we do the survey again, that most of our customers will be off of the 3.x platform, or we are also going to change the way that we're asking questions so that we get direction on the 4.x experience, even if 3.x is something that they're also continuing to use.
I like how many people were up on the 4.5 on the kind of later versions. There was like a little gap between 4.5 and 4.1. You know, you've got the people who have just started looking at 4 and never ran their upgrades. And then people who did probably continue running upgrades and ended up on 4.5 or maybe even 4.6 eventually. So cool to see that people didn't just switch to 4 and then stay put. You know, hopefully the auto upgrade or the support for in place cluster upgrades is working well for folks. So it's cool to see some of that shift in the data. Usually we have kind of a slow uptake on some of these releases, so nice to see it moving along.
Yeah, that's a great observation. Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Okay, so kind of a summary on that section. The top 5 apps decreased overall, but they were still the top 5. And as we noted, there was some growth in the next 6 through 9, and eventing, or I'm sorry, serverless was one of those that was kind of looking to take possibly a major role in the future. The newest version tried in 2019, 80% of the people said 3.x, and like you just mentioned, that had decreased to 40% in 2020. But we're also seeing a high uptake in what we have for 4.x. And I apologize, I'm trying to handle my dog here at the same time.
We all have these problems now.
Yeah, dogs, kids, whatever it is.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, right? Like Max just ran in here a couple minutes ago to give me something. I was like, thanks, kid. I wasn't doing anything, you know.
Okay, so as far as the actions, like I mentioned, we are thinking about how we can focus the survey or word the survey a little bit more so that we make sure that, as you're going to see in the next couple of sections, we talk about ease of use and satisfaction ratings. And we want to make sure that those ratings are based on 4.x in the future so that it's not mixed. So we have a better understanding of the baseline. So the next section is around developing and testing code on OpenShift. So this first question here is around, is OpenShift easy to use? Rate your agreement with the statement. As you'll see here, this is one of the outliers, and we had a scale of 1 to 5, or strongly agree, somewhat agree, kind of neutral, and then somewhat disagree and strongly disagree. But at an overall level, respondents find using OpenShift relatively easy to use. It's kind of a higher up on that top side. And we are seeing a slight increase between 19 and 20, nothing substantial, you know, a couple of percentage points, but nothing substantial there. But still, it's good to see that we're on the higher end of that scale. And now this is an interesting one where we're showing rate your agreement on OpenShift is easy to use based on the release you are on. And I probably cannot increase this percentage, so I apologize for this. But what you do see here is in 4.5, we see a pretty good uptake on what people are doing for somewhat agree and strongly agree on 4.5, where we had, I think it's between the top 2, we've got about 25% are saying they either strongly or somewhat agree. But then we're seeing a big fall in when you look at 4.6. So we got to investigate that a little bit. It could be that 4.6 had just come out. Maybe people weren't used to it yet. Not sure what features they were trying to use. But that's something that we'll definitely have to take a look at.
We got some feedback on that last slide that the font is a little bit on the small side on this one. Do you know if we're planning on dropping a link to the deck at some point or not today?
I don't think that we're going to drop it today. I think we need to improve some of the readability of the font right now.
Yeah,
makes sense.
So yes.
After we get a chance to do some cleanup, we will share the results a little bit more widely. Thanks for asking in chat.
Definitely. Yeah. Thanks for that. Okay, so this one, so now we're going back to OpenShift is easy to use, which is interesting. So we've got the 3.11 or earlier is on the bottom half of the page, and 4.1 to 4.6 is on the top half of the page. And again, I think this is great if you're looking at ease of use from 4.1 to 4.6. We are seeing higher percentage, right? So 50% of the people are saying they somewhat agree. and about 17% are saying that they strongly agree. So as opposed to in 3.11, the percentage was much lower, I think, for those top two ratings. So, so that's good news when you're talking about relative ease of use from one product, from one release to the next. When we're talking about capabilities meeting our requirements, almost all the respondents found that OpenShift's capabilities do meet their requirements. You can see again a little bit of an uptick in somewhat agree from 2019 to 2020, but everything else is relatively similar across the board. The next section of the survey is really focused on satisfaction with developing and testing on OpenShift. So rather than showing each of the individual charts, I'm going to give some more summary type information. So the questions that we talked about included satisfaction around the ease of getting started, interactive local development, OpenShift environment used to develop and test against, the image build process and source to image, and the time it takes to build and run an application. So again, would be interesting for people to continue to comment if you have, if you agree or really even disagree on any of these. It would be interesting to know, right? So our observations was that the satisfaction of interactive local development made a big jump in 2020, and that had previously been one of our lowest rated items. The getting started piece kind of does remain flat, so we're trying to figure out how much of that is attributed to V3 versus 4 mixed experience. And there was also some interestingly high feedback with 4.1 to 4.3, and then good with 4.5, and then again a little bit negative with 4.6, but there was a small sample size, so we need to do some investigation there. And then the nice thing to see here was that with the steady improvements we saw across the board from image build process in S2I, where in 2018 it was 19% to then to 23%, then to 31% for that very satisfied rating. And as far as actions go, we were talking about the fact that it's going to be interesting to see if satisfaction regarding getting started will increase because we've got all these, great improvements and other features that are available starting soon or recently with the developer sandbox. Making the footprint size smaller for CRC. In the console specifically around getting started, we've introduced all these new quick starts, some in 4.6, but more in 4.7 and guided tours as well. So we're hoping that those things will help to improve some of these ratings in 2021.
Cool.
The next piece is around utilizing services on OpenShift. So this kind of focused on satisfaction around being able to find a service, whether it's cloud-based or local, having enough choices of service, being able to set them up, maintain them, as well as use them inside of your applications. And again, you can see some, not super significant. Again, like there's 2 or 3%, I guess, increase or decrease. Increase on the very satisfied rating. Decrease on the satisfied rating because I'm assuming that those people kind of voted up, which is good to see. That's finding services, whether it's cloud-based or local. But for the most part, customer satisfaction is pretty flat over the last 2 years in this area. Where very minor improvements around having enough choice of services, maintaining services, or user services in the applications. And so again, I just mentioned some of the things here that we're working on in 4.8 in the console, where we have an enhanced catalog experience as well as new topology feature to help find services. So we think that that will really bump that finding service piece. When you have the Red Hat integration CamelK operator installed, developers will also now see in the event source catalog CamelK connectors, starting with a few, starting I think with 5, but you'll see that number increase. So again, the number of options that developers will have available to them will continue to increase. And then there's a bunch of work going on with managed Kafka services, which will set the stage for a consistent experience in the console around managed services across the board. So I think that's super important as well.
That's interesting to me that managed services didn't see a big increase with all the operator hub options that are potentially available. Not all of them are pre-installed on your cluster, but I was kind of expecting to see a big jump in availability of related services that are just easily pluggable and instantly kind of available, given you have the admin capabilities to add the operator, right?
Yeah, I agree. And this could still, and this is the tough part with this one, where we still had a number of people back on 3.x. The question is
exactly, yeah,
who's answering this question, right? So again, we'll definitely be addressing that part of the survey next time around, so that we can have a better understanding. I'm also curious, like there are lots of operators available. Like, I wonder how cluster admins are picking and choosing which ones to take, right? Like,
yeah.
I'm not sure if we do much research around that or have much knowledge. Like, I think we blog on quite a few of them and what some of them will bring to the table, but I'm not sure where people are getting how they're making their choices.
Yeah.
So JP Data have an update specifically for you from our product management team on Quay's requirement for Docker. 3.4 is getting released this week, and there will be improvements in the documentation to handle Podman versus Docker better. So just wait till the end of the week and you'll have an answer, hopefully.
Awesome. Okay. All right, so application development features on OpenShift. This section of the survey focused on application development, but specifically around application health, performance, visibility, feedback on progress and errors during development, application debugging, project and environment organization, integration with CI/CD, as well as availability of modern frameworks and runtime. So again, just kind of skipping the charts and just moving down to our observations and our actions. Overall, customer satisfaction is pretty flat again. In 2020, application debugging and feedback on progress and errors are the lowest rated items around satisfaction that we have. So as far as actions go, there are ongoing efforts to improve application health and performance visibility. We've got a lot of work. We have a monitoring / observability team that's doing a lot of work on the back end, and the console team is working with them to see how we can bring pieces in. We're also working with other members around, Java performance. Is there a way for us to bring in Java performance dashboards into the console, et cetera? And as far as like the one around availability of modern frameworks and runtimes, what we are doing in 4.8 is there's more and more Quarkus. The Quarkus experience is showing up more, and we've added some quick starts so that to provide some awareness for users that stuff is available and can work on the OpenShift platform, and kind of walk you through how to do that. And then the other thing I did want to note too is, since integration with CI/CD tools was part of that, 4.5 through 4.8 is providing a seamless integration with Tecton pipelines inside the console. We also have there's an IDE that's available. I'm sorry, a plugin that's available for IDEs around Tecton as well. So I think, again, we're providing additional pieces of the story that should continue to help those satisfaction ratings go up, I think.
I particularly appreciate that last section on developer productivity. I like the focus on feedback during my development loop, and that's something that's not always available depending on how you have set up your development environment. A lot of folks will do a very minimal setup where most of their work is being done maybe locally in an IDE. They may not be leveraging their cluster to get that kind of production quality feedback as part of their local dev loop. They might only be getting that feedback after they deploy or push something into a Tecton pipeline or others, right? So you get that feedback on an interval, but not necessarily as you're doing the iterative development work. So we've added a lot of capabilities to get more feedback out of your cluster, production quality feedback, while you're actually doing that iterative work, to hopefully give you just a better reflection of what production is like, and to help you save time and energy as you're working, leveraging that improved feedback. So I know we're doing a lot of work to help connect the dots for folks on those pieces. But a lot of new things in 2020, and more on the road coming up soon.
Yeah, for sure. This piece is interesting as well. So this is around resources for OpenShift, and we're not talking about Kubernetes resources, but more like resources for a user to go get more information, right? So it focused on satisfaction of resources for OpenShift around product help and documentation, blogs, whether they go, blogs covering developers.redhat.com, as well as the OpenShift blog. And I'm noting that here because we don't have a satisfaction rating based on each of the different areas. It's on blogs overall, as well as how-to guides and tutorials. So our numbers aren't terrific here by any means. There's a lot of improvement, I think, room for improvement. And you can see like there's slight changes, but it's nothing really substantial across the board for product help. Blogs, you can see we have ton from the very satisfied rating. We've gone up from 2018. What is that? Maybe you can say it went from about 18% to 30%. So that's pretty decent. But again, we really want to be, I think, a little bit higher than that if we can be. And then around how-to guides and tutorials, this seems even a little bit lower. So that being said, I think we do have kind of some good news in the pipelines as well, though, of where we're going. So again, the observations are that product help docs, how-to guides, and tutorials are some of the lowest rated areas across the board. We did see some slippage in satisfaction in product help and docs and blogs from 2019 to 2020. And we clearly need to focus in these areas, but we are anticipating specifically in the console that quick starts are going to address some of these areas around the tutorial piece. And it's really interesting. So we are utilizing quick starts or trying to utilize quick starts from the PM and the UX side, but we're also talking to the developer advocate team on like how they might be able to take advantage of them. We've also had a number of meetings with some customers who are really interested in bringing quick starts into their own environment and utilizing those to help to teach best practices on how to create or create, upgrade, maintain applications in their own environment for their own developers. So that's pretty interesting to see, I think. And I guess that last bullet is we do have a plan on focused on how we're improving blog content delivery as well as contribution. I'd really be interested if people have the opportunity to kind of say something in the chat, like what are the most useful types of blogs that you guys see? Do you like the what's new blogs? Do you like more something around it's walking you through something and you can learn about something really specific? And or are you typically looking at OpenShift blog versus the Red Hat, the RHD blog site? So there's a bunch of questions there, but if you want to provide any feedback, any of that would be much appreciated. Any questions?
Yeah, we definitely.
Or comments around that stuff?
Yeah, if you have ideas or feedback from, what you want to see on the blog, let us know for sure.
Yeah.
What's new is a blurb on marketing, not good. Should point to a video tutorial like the ones from Daniel. I mean, we do have, and we are trying. There is a what's new page now on OpenShift.com. So if you go to OpenShift.com/what's new, you'll get the latest briefing and deck from the last, show that we did on the topic.
Interesting. JP Dade says, I look for who they're from.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah. Anyone have a favorite post? I mean, there's so many now.
Yeah.
I think Alex Handy has his hands full, our blog curator, as it were.
Yeah, I haven't been as active on the blog personally, but I do see posts occasionally from our product management team that I think are very informative and have a lot of really great details on roadmap and new releases and other things like that. So yeah, definitely let us know in the chat if you have a favorite blog post or another blog that you think has vastly superior content that I should be trying to take notes on, whatever they're doing, and work some of that content into our blog. Definitely let us know. We value your feedback.
Yeah, and good feedback is the challenges you're hitting, right? Like GP Dade was talking about his challenges with installing Quay key, however you want to say it, on Rail 8, right? Like we need feedback like that to get y'all great blog posts to help you enable yourselves to go hard and fast, right? Like that's the idea. Move quickly and safely.
I'm also just going to pull these in here. We're going to add a couple of tabs. So I think probably everybody knows about the OpenShift.com blog, I'm sure. One of the things that we have been doing is a concerted effort when we're doing something for the developer is that we are posting our blogs on developers.redhat.com.
Oh, nice.
So I'm not sure if you guys are all signed up for that program or not. Definitely look into it if you are interested. But if you go into the products tab on the top right, let's see, what did I just do? And then scroll down to the bottom, there's a Red Hat OpenShift here. And this is kind of where you can see downloads, getting started, an overview. But this is where you can see a lot of the content that we do. I think it's underneath getting started as well. There's a bunch of the resources that we have around the developer perspective and developer console here, as well as other areas around developing on OpenShift. So definitely take a look at that as well.
Tip, have Twitter notifications for OpenShift account. That's a really good tip. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is there, are people looking at just like all the blogs? This is a good question that Ryan brings up. Are you looking at just the OpenShift blog? Are you looking at the developers blog? Because the content does kind of cross-pollinate seldomly, I feel like, right? Like we keep one in one place, one in the other kind of deal.
Our survey did not differentiate, just so you know.
Okay.
And it's actually, I mean, it's also pretty, yeah, exactly. And it's also pretty interesting too, right? Like, so you think about like what we're doing with our developer experience office hour. We oftentimes are talking about how to customize the experience for developers, which might be tailored to admins, right? That the admins have to do the customization, whether they expose operators or shut off Helm or add more Helm repositories or whatever. But there's still an overlap. So it is kind of interesting to see where people kind of innately go for those blogs. But I'm going to continue on a little bit. So this is around satisfaction with OpenShift build features. So this was reported just a little bit differently. If you remember, the 1 was on a scale of 1 to 4. 1 is very unsatisfied. 4 is very satisfied. So we're seeing numbers kind of right around satisfied, I guess. So pushing build artifacts to my repo is 3.1, along with security concerns with builds and ability to apply runtime config and availability of builder images. And then the straight 3.0 around injecting dependencies and the ability to extend and modify build steps. And then a little bit lower around build speed and the resulting image size. So some, observations and summary around that is the overall satisfaction. Again, it's pretty much everything is relatively flat. In this instance, slightly up. And as we just noted, dependency injection and image size and build speed are ranked the lowest. So part of those actions are to prioritize some of those features in the upcoming roadmap. and investigate dependency injection issues. So, and also hoping, again, this goes back to guidance and documentation, best practices on how to achieve those kind of build improvements. What are the biggest challenges you face developing applications with OpenShift? Some of these, so we're going to start with the CNCF survey, where what their challenges were in using and deploying containers. So their top challenges were complexity joined cultural changes with the development team. So that is kind of interesting. And then if you take a look at some of the R things on our survey, the observations were top issues were time and culture, local environment and CNC, new and getting started or documentation, performance and resources, and stability. So it is interesting that new user, getting started, documentation, and performance are being able to kind of observe or monitor things seem to be some of our largest challenges there. So again, around actions, increase priority of features and documentation to reduce friction for adoption, and of course continue to try to reduce that CRC footprint, which is already in the plan, and we've definitely made some improvements to date, but we're continuing to work towards that.
I like. I noticed that last slide had was more general. Yeah, CNCF survey, and I think this noting that complexity and cultural changes with development were some of the top kind of holdups to getting top challenges. Is kind of relates to some of the issues we saw earlier with getting started being like a big challenge. We had some kind of lower scores around the getting started experience. And I think part of that is just for folks who are moving to Kubernetes or to containers from a before Kubernetes type of era, there is a lot of there's a lot of knowledge, a lot of learning, a lot of skills you have to adopt. And all of that takes time, all of that takes energy. Hopefully OpenShift is doing a good job of helping reduce the complexity and the amount of learning that you have to do. It's definitely a challenging situation because we want to give you full access to all the underlying Kubernetes resources while still hiding enough of it to make it easy for new users. So hopefully we're doing a decent job of kind of splitting that balance there.
I mean, it's always hard when you're dealing with abstractions, right? Like,
yeah,
how much do you abstract away? How much do you expose? That's always like a razor edge balance, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. I'm just noticing something here that somebody had mentioned. It would be nice to get, if there was a OpenShift only newsletter, I'd subscribe to get it if it was once a week, but I'm not going to visit the sites every week to check what's new. So sense. I don't know if anybody who's on, who are like Chris or Ryan, I do not know this, but the Red Hat developers newsletter, do we know how frequently that goes out? Is that a monthly?
I think it's once a week.
Or
I forget. It might be every other week. I forget, to be honest with you.
Yeah, something to check out. We can take. I can take that action. So come next week, we can talk about that a little bit too. And
yeah,
what's in that newsletter?
I'm probably going to reach out to Alex Handy to just be like, it might be a good idea to start a newsletter with just blog posts and interesting things, like links and summaries done, right? Like,
right.
5 to 10 links a week. I feel like that would be a good thing.
Definitely. Okay, so let's go getting started in languages and frameworks. So how do you get started creating new applications for OpenShift? So I will read some of these to you because I know that the font is very small. So the first section is around the web console.
Wow. That font
interesting that we're seeing a decline on that. I know. These are images too, so I can't do anything, unfortunately. The next one is around OC or kubectl create. The next one is around internally developed tooling. And then Helm charts is the fourth. OpenShift templates is the one that's only highlighted in pink. Odeo Create, so that's kind of where we are with the top ones. So the kind of overview is that many respondents start creating new applications on OpenShift by using the console or the OC or kubectl create commands. Interestingly enough, when I do have conversations with people, with customers, what we are hearing is on board, people who are brand new to OpenShift are typically coming in and doing like the import from Git, that type of thing with the console, and are very familiar and comfortable with that, because they're the ones that are not super comfortable with Kubernetes and want that more abstracted view. So again, interesting to see what we're showing here.
It looks like Helm finally moved ahead of internally developed tooling, got surpassed by Helm.
Right. It's not a bad thing, right?
That's cool. That's cool to see folks move to standard kit that is maintained by a community rather than all in-house. There's definitely some value to doing it all in-house when you need to, but it's nice to see Helm charts kind of moving up as a widely adopted way of packaging and distributing your solutions. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, the interesting thing, like I'm just trying to look at the percentage. So in 2019, Helm charts was at about 18%, and now is at about 37%. So that's a pretty big hike. Yeah. Okay, the next one again is around which languages and tools are used by your applications on OpenShift. So I'll read down like the top 8 or so. So Java was number 1, OpenJDK 2, JavaScript, Python, JBoss EAP, Go, Tomcat, JBoss Web Server, and then .NET Core. And then we also see Quarkus. But again, Quarkus is new, so you see Quarkus kind of, where were they? They were at about 12% last year, and then this year at about 24%. So it will be interesting to see if that continues to grow, or it will be interesting to watch that grow. And it's also interesting that the top languages used by apps in OpenShift are Java, OpenJDK, JavaScript, and Python, but you're also seeing a decline from 2018 to 20 with a few of these. So some people disagree and think Go is the king here.
I used to see charts like this where they would have JavaScript and Node.js as 2 separate categories. It looks like we do what's that?
I mean, is that really like a thing? I mean, are they really different that much?
They're both JavaScript. One's just running on the server side. Yeah. So it could be like static web versus actually run via a Node.js server that you want to distinguish between, which is somewhat valid. But yeah, it's interesting to me that there's a Java and then an OpenJDK and then also Wildfly and a couple potential ways to roll up Java into a larger category. Since this is Red Hat survey, we do have a lot of Java adoption. So I was kind of expecting to see Java up at the top of the list for sure.
Totally. WASM for next year's survey, asked Carlos Santana. I mean, that's probably going to be in the mix at some point, right? Like,
yeah. I heard last week some folks from the Rust community saying that Rust is potentially the future of JavaScript, because you could write Rust that'll compile to binary in your browser. And they're like, we're just going to skip over everything and go compile right to binary and ship it to the browser. So I don't know.
That could very well be the case, right? Like Rust has a very bright future when it comes to WebAssembly.
Yeah.
All right, so this next slide is around, like, we pulled in a part of the GitHub survey as well, right? Just to show top languages over the years as well. So if you can't read the image on the left, 2014, it starts on the left-hand side and moves over to 2020 on the right-hand side. So you again see JavaScript remaining consistent. You see Python kind of with an upswing from 2014. Java,
is
maybe a little bit of a downside.
Yeah, like I think it's interesting that Python has kind of grown over the years, right? Like remember like 10 years ago, people were like, oh, that's like a teaching language. And now it's like, nope, it's a everything language.
There's really good AI and really good libraries for machine learning, image processing. I know there's great libraries for a lot of different languages,
A lot of stuff,
but yeah,
yeah.
Python has a great collection of libraries that are available.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
TypeScript is making major moves there in that last
Yeah,
one.
here it is, definitely, for sure.
Isn't TypeScript just like safe JavaScript, right?
Yeah. Usually it's kind of a newfangled JavaScript to some extent. Yeah.
And then
Okay.
here was another survey, Stack Overflow, kind of the same, trying to tease out the same types of information, but where they see Python moving down for eighth year in a row, JavaScript has maintained its strongholds, so
Yeah.
kind of some interesting things. And we're seeing some similarities between these, so it's interesting.
It's amazing to see Ruby just drop so far, so fast.
Yeah.
HTML.
Okay,
troll.
then around frameworks. So which frameworks are you used by your applications in OpenShift? So again, I'll read down the left axis is Spring and Spring Boot is the first one. Then the next one is Node.js. Then next one is Kafka, then followed by Angular, React, Hibernate, Camel, and Django. So Kafka was added in 2020 and is already in the top 3, which is pretty interesting. That was about, just about 44% of the respondents said that they're using Kafka. So again, based on our survey, the most popular frameworks are Spring, Spring Boot, Node.js, Kafka, and Angular.
Interesting to see Angular on that list.
Yeah.
That's more front end, right? Or am I just off the base on that one?
Angular and React, right? Or both.
React is definitely a front end framework, I feel like.
Yeah. So it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. The next one is how do you migrate existing applications to OpenShift? So lift and shift, copy existing apps, resources, and modify them using OC new app with existing Git repo. Fourth is refactor and rehost. Fifth was third-party consulting. Then strangler pattern, replacing monolith capabilities with independent microservices. Then internally developed tooling, then Red Hat migration tooling for applications and others. So it is interesting. I'm just going to note that really quickly. Red Hat migration tooling toolkit for applications was newly added in 2020, and about 17% of the people have noted that, which is interesting. So it'll be cool to see if that continues to grow as well. So, go ahead.
I feel like we've done several migration toolkit shows, and I believe there's one upcoming too. So let me grab some links for y'all.
Yeah,
but please keep going. Yeah.
Okie doke. Yeah. So clearly, lift and shift and copy existing application resources and modifier are the top 2, but we have seen an increase with lift and shift between the last 2 years and 2020. So that's interesting to see. Yeah.
I'm curious to see if we have a operator hosted pattern showing up here in future results. I know that's something we talk about being a way of hosting stateful applications, because you could, if you had a step where you needed to bootstrap a database and pre-populate it with a set of data, or do backups, or do other more complicated app performance things in the background. Operators are a big way of achieving that goal, but I don't see them listed here yet. I don't know how widely adopted that is packaging up your app in an operator. But I would hope to see more adoption of that, especially with our support for operator-backed Helm charts and other solutions like that.
That's really interesting. So Ryan, we should definitely chat, because making sure we don't have that as an option today on this. So we can chat to see if we can get that added for 2021 for sure. So
I wouldn't expect to see a huge amount of it currently based on the current documentation around operators. Most of it's around how to package up your database solution more than your application, but definitely an option for folks in the audience.
all right.
So packaging an app in an operator is twice the complexity. A client would not go with that route by experience. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically asking someone to package their application by writing another application in Go. Right. And not everyone is up for that challenge of like, oh, go write a second app in Go to package your first. It's not super easy, but with support for Helm charts, operator backed Helm charts, that might be a little bit easier option. But there's definitely some trade-offs and more work for us to document how you might adopt one of those approaches.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ways to write operators now. Python, Bash, Ansible, the list just goes on and on. I saw another project, I'm pretty sure a Java-based operator thing was out there. I think I saw last year. Yeah.
All right, so going through some of the observations, ODO, I'm not sure how many people are on the call are using that, but it made a jump from a percentage perspective from 5 to 13%. So that's great news, but the overall usage is still low. I think we need to continue to kind of make people aware of that and the power, explain the power and why somebody would want to use that CLI. As far as Helm charts, Helm chart usage for apps continues to increase, which is great. And as everybody knows, we are increasing the amount of support inside of the console as well as some other areas. Over 50% of the respondents are using the console to start application creation. I'm going to downplay the next couple of items. Some other on the action side, we are starting to gather metrics for ODO usage, as well as some of our other areas in the portfolio. Helm certification process is going to be started and will be supported in the console sometime within 2021, which is, I think, good news.
Yep.
And we're going to continue to improve and enhance the console and support multiple methods of creation. Dev files are something that's really exciting that people are talking about, which are, that's going to help satisfy our kind of Roar launcher use cases. And those are going to be, I think those dev files are pretty strong and flexible. And I think that's going to be a really good option in the future, as you'll also see our portfolio kind of standardizing around the usage of dev files 2.0 as well. So looking at the clock, I'll just do this one section. So where do you develop and test your application for OpenShift? So the first one is around local desktop instead of OpenShift, other internally hosted, local on desktop with application runtime, externally hosted or local desktop instance of other container platforms. So a large number of respondents use a local instance of OpenShift or internally hosted versions for developing and testing their apps, which is interesting. You can see though, it did kind of seem to decrease a bit on the local / desktop instance of OpenShift from 2018 till today. So what do you use to run a desktop instance of OpenShift? So we have code ready containers is the first one, the first option, Minishift is the second option, OC cluster up is third, container development kit, CDK is fourth, and then other. So we do see again, a big kind of uptick on code ready containers, where in 2019, it was at about 39% and it's gone to 64% or so, which is exciting. And we do see mini shift declining, so as well as OC cluster up.
CRC, really? Are these people rich with large laptops? It's entirely possible that they're running CRC and VMs in their environment, right? Like we don't necessarily know the underlying infrastructure of CRC, do we? We don't get telemetry on that, right?
Not yet. Not yet. No.
Mm-hmm.
I did see some data on most installed CRC versus installed to AWS or installed to Google's cloud, or and there was a surprising amount of adoption on CRC. So you're right. I don't know whether that is 100% of that is going onto laptops. You could definitely run it in a large VM hosted somewhere. So yeah, that's totally a valid way of setting this up.
And so this one is around which local desktop instance of other container platforms do you use in Docker run? So again, Docker runs first, Minikube second, Podman run third, other, and then Docker Swarm. So again, just interesting information. And this is aligned now. We pull back in the CNCF survey where the top Kubernetes environments are Minikube, 37% for them, on-prem Kubernetes installations, which is 31%, and Docker Kubernetes, which is 29%. So for comparison, it's interesting. And I think I'll just do this one last one. Which editors do you use? And with this, we're seeing VS Code is #1. We do see an increase again from 20. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So VS Code first, VI second, Eclipse IDE or Red Hat Container Ready Studio, IntelliJ and JetBrains IDEs are fourth, Vim is fifth. Then we get to Visual Studio, Code Ready Workspaces, Eclipse Che, and on underneath. But VS Code, VI, and Eclipse IDE are the most popular editors for us. And so that's kind of where we stand. There's some more there, but I think we're 3 minutes before the hour, so I think we've probably made it through quite a bit of this. Any other questions or comments around what we've seen today?
No, but there's like a lot of great chat, and I will make sure that you have all that feedback after I get off the air today. How about that?
My favorite comment from this page is these are all just YAML editors nowadays.
Yeah.
Regardless of which one you pick, it's all YAML editors.
It's all YAML. I am a calendar-driven YAML engineer. That's still one of my favorite phrases. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks very much. Hey, Ryan, do we happen to have a link to that survey that we put in last week? If not, I can try to find it super quickly.
Yeah, let me see if I can find that real quick in our last minute or two. I had a link last time. Let's see.
Yeah, so last week we had this little survey around, what would you like to see in the developer experience office hours going forward? Ryan did a great job at notating some of the different types of options that we can provide, and really getting feedback from you all to make sure that we're sharing what you want to hear. So if you can find that quickly.
Yeah, trying to get it right now. Let's see.
Actually, I think I might have tweeted it too somewhere along the way.
Let's see, send this. Get the link with a short URL. Got it. All right.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, pasted that into chat. And I should get a shorter URL for folks tuning in later. But yeah, there's a somewhat shortened URL. We would love to hear your ideas for additional topics on the show. There's a fill in the blank area at the bottom of that feedback form. So definitely let us know if you have more topics you would like to see. And thank you to everyone who contributed in chat today. You've made it fun and engaging for me, and I definitely appreciate it. So thanks again. Thanks to Serena and Steve Spiker. Did he help out with some of this?
Yeah.
Thanks to both of y'all on this excellent survey data. Really, really cool stuff in there.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you guys.
Yeah, thank y'all for tuning in. Up next, we're going to be talking about StackRox, our most recent acquisition. So this will be a fun stream, but I've got to cut over to that. So thank you all for tuning in. We will see y'all next week or in the next minute or two. Take your pick. Be safe out
Thanks,
there, everyone.
everybody. Have a good
Thanks.
week.
See you next time.